If you live outside your comfort zone, you are growing, you're expanding. But if you are inside your comfort zone, you're shrinking, you're getting smaller. It's the whole concept of having a stretch in the morning. If you never stretch, you stay inside your comfort zone, your range of motion gets smaller and smaller and smaller as you stiffen up in life.
Hello, my name is Mary Barrett and welcome to A Cup of Tea with Mary B. If you're looking to become the best version of yourself and need some help and guidance to learn, to be inspired, to believe in yourself, join me as I pour you a warm cup of wisdom and positivity to help you to have a deeper understanding of the power of your own mind. Listen to episodes as I interview ordinary people achieving extraordinary things, plus sharing my personal insights and motivational tips of 3 decades of being a coach and 10 years as a master mum. Just imagine me as your coach buddy as I disrupt your thinking, be a catalyst for change and a stretcher of infinite possibilities. I am so happy to share with you this next podcast with Dr. Tim Errington. Tim is a chiropractor, author of the book Posture Matters, and owner of 5 award-winning health centres in Singapore. I invited Tim to have a conversation with me as I wanted to hear about how he's navigating the changes for his chiropractic business during COVID lockdown in Singapore. I also wanted him to share his career journey, which he started with him working in a department store, then becoming a firefighter, then an engineer, an entrepreneur, and then at the age of 40, he began training as a chiropractic doctor and is now onto his next career of functional medicine. I know you'll be inspired by his scientific knowledge, his passion, and his positive mental outlook on any obstacle that comes his way. It's wonderful to hear how he reacted when he was told twice that he was unemployable. And I'm sure you will find it so interesting to notice how much of our early conditioning can have a massive impact on our career choices. And by the way, he is the father of teenage twins too. A master leader for sure. This podcast was recorded during COVID-19 lockdown in Singapore via Zoom. So although the audio is a little impaired, I'm sure it won't affect your enjoyment.
Good morning, Tim, and welcome to A Cup of Tea with Mary B.
Good morning, Mary. It's so good to see you. It's been a very interesting time here in COVID, locked up in the house, trying to keep things going. It's very nice of you to ask me to come on and have this little chat, so I'm interested to see where it'll go.
Oh, brilliant. Thank you, Dr. Tim. I'm very grateful for you to be my guest. And exactly that, I wanted to talk to you about a few things today, really, because you're a very inspirational character and person. And I want to talk to you really about how have you managed to navigate these changes within COVID-19 and the lockdown? So I'd be really curious to find out how you're managing that. And also, I really would love you to share, because I think it would help many people, your ability that you've had to change your career. Many clients come to me at a certain age, different ages, and say, oh, I'm stuck in my career. I'm too old to change now. What can I do differently? And I know you've done that successfully, and I think it'd be really inspirational for people. So I'd like to talk about that. And also, I know it will really help other people to understand your passion for saving the planet and our environment as well. So a lot to cover, but you're so interesting that I want to get as much I can from you in this time that we've got, Tim.
Okay, well, let's just shoot away. Let's see where we go.
Okay, I'd like to hear about your business and then talk us through about how you've had to navigate the changes and what's been the challenges and what you've been learning or what insights you've had through this lockdown period, please, Tim.
You understand, as chiropractors, we are very touchy-feely. We actually put our hands on people to help them get better. So we're not amongst in the medical paradigm where we treat clients. We work on people's bodies and with their nervous systems to try and help them heal and be healthy. Difficult for us in Singapore because we are such a small community of chiropractors. We haven't had enough traction, if you like, to actually become regulated. So we were closed down very, very quickly. And it suddenly was a huge reality check that this is real, this is actually happening. We we saw it coming for a while. We really didn't know. Stuck here in Singapore on this lovely little island, sometimes you think things are going to circumnavigate you. But no, the tsunami swept right across us, and we were shut down for 8 weeks. We have just recently been able to open our clinics again, and we have 5 and 10 doctors, and we do have to try and keep them working. We very quickly realized when we were forced to shut down that we needed to get open quickly because people were suffering. When you think about the virus, it takes 2 to tango. There is a virus, a COVID-19 virus, which it's inserted genetic information into the host, but it only happens if the host is vulnerable and weak. Okay, so our job as chiropractors is to work with the host, and people in my world are not so worried about catching the virus because every day we work on our wellness, and this has been my message. We are not vulnerable. My kids in our house, we don't get the flu. Our immune systems are strong and robust, and instead of treating conditions and disease, we work with the body, and we put so much life into the body and vibrant health. There is literally no room for disease, so the virus can't take a hold. So that's our paradigm. That's what we passionately believe, and this is our job. So when we got closed down, we were very quickly realized that we've got to provide a service. I can't put my hands on anybody to help manipulate spines, but I can help inspire people. We can talk to people about strengthening the host, help people get out of pain and everything. So what did we do? We have to look for technology. So people say you can't treat an old dog new tricks. Well, sometimes the old dog has to learn new tricks.
And many of them, Tim.
So suddenly I've been learning some new tricks, and we very quickly set up a telehealth desk, and I've got this fantastic software where people can actually enter my waiting room, and then I can invite them in, and we can have a chat just like you and I are doing. And this is telehealth, and it's worked extremely well. We've had some amazing feedback from that. Now we have many clients coming to see us, and our first point of contact was telehealth. And of course, we were able to give them advice. How do they get out of pain? How do they strengthen their immune system? So that's been really good. I searched the internet for various tools, things that we can use. So normally we demonstrate exercises. Now we can send exercises out as software. We can prescribe sets of exercises with frequency and etc. to clients, and they can make comments, and it's a nice feedback thing. All the exercises have videos, etc. So that's worked really well as well. So we've really been able to create a service that people have been able to embrace and work with. When we're not shut down with COVID, I'm normally very busy working with corporates. And in Singapore, we probably have the biggest wellness outreach program for corporates. And we work with many of the big corporations, the household names. And so very, very quickly, we were invited to start doing what I normally do, which is go into these corporations and do lectures and talks about health and wellness and strategies of living a healthy life. We've been doing that on webinars. So I had to migrate my talks into a way that I could present on webinars. Now we're sort of doing at least one a day now, and it's really good.
Wow.
And because of this situation with COVID, it's made me think about the big picture. And we are not just doctors of pain, although people come to us with pain. People under wellness care, when they start to get their pillars of health in place and they start to understand the importance of reducing stress and sleep, and obviously nutrition and exercise, everyone knows that, but having a positive mental attitude, having a purpose. When people retire and they lose their purpose, they don't do so well.
That's right.
My advice to anybody is never retire.
That's right. Actually, Tim, I haven't got the word retirement in my vocabulary.
Oh, what is it? Yeah. I'm gonna regenerate like Doctor Who does. That's what I'm doing.
You are, and it sounds like you're really regenerating your business too, there, Tim. And I want to go back to your first point there about each person is the host, and we can stop getting dis-ease. And I call it dis-ease, so that I believe in the whole mind-body connection.
You're absolutely right. The word disease comes from dis-ease. It's a
Yeah.
loss of ease in the body. I mean, this stuff is so basic. It should be taught at school, but it's so simple. It's so simple. It misses people. It goes over their heads or something. But, health only happens when you are in a state of homeostasis. And, we'll talk about the planet again, because we're trying our best to knock the planet out of homeostasis. But, COVID will only attack people who are immune compromised. So the immune system has been knocked out of homeostasis. And that happens when, for example, if you're stressed. It's scientific fact that the hormones of stress down-regulate your genes.
That's right.
And if you have your genes, all we have is our genes, and then our genes express themselves according to the environment.
Mm-hmm.
So we have a planetary environment. We also have an internal environment, and we have an environment in which our mind works, our subconscious brain, and that sets the tone for our life. Mm-hmm. And if stress is not relieved, then we have that cortisol running around our veins. That is changing the expression of everything. And the sympathetic nervous system runs wild, and a loss of ease, a loss of homeostasis.
I 100% agree with you there, Tim. So I'm curious, because we talk about chiropractic under the whole wellness, health, and the pillars of health. And through this time, you've had to navigate. So when all these changes happened, what were your thought processes? Because, as you know, I'm the architect of the mind. You're the chiropractor of the body, and obviously the two are very much connected. So what were your thought processes? I'm curious about how you were able to switch around, say, okay, I've got a business, I've got a livelihood, I've got employees, I've got 5 clinics. What were your thought processes to start your regeneration, and how quickly did that come? And I'm curious about what your thinking was at that time.
Well, first of all, I think we had to have that reality check, and we had to suddenly take it on the chin that we were a zero income business with extremely high overheads. We have 10 doctors. Doctors don't come cheap, believe me. Mm-hmm. We have all these clinics, and our overheads are enormous. So I knew that we were in trouble. So we had to act. I am a believer in being very proactive, and try not to be so reactive. In this case, I had to be reactive in a very proactive way. If you get my drift.
I do.
So we had to look at things from both sides. How can we generate income? We have to make sure for our people. I mean, we have 1,200 people that come and see us every week. We've got to, and they need us, and we have to be around for when we reopen. So how can we do that? We've very quickly got a grips on our expenditure. Yeah. And the way I looked at it was, we had to buy time. With a scientific mind, I looked at this virus, and I looked at where it came from, and I looked at the SARS thing and MERS and what have you. These viruses tend to be around for a couple of years. Then they tend to disappear. Now, we don't know whether this is going to happen, but the amount of time I needed to buy was more than 6 months. That I knew. And then, what kind of reality are we going to come back to? We are very fluid. We're changing. We're back at work. Our clinics that are out in the homelands, in Tampines and Clementi, Dubai, places like that, they're doing really well. That's where the people are. They're not working at home. Our clinics in the CBD, they're not doing so well because no one's in the CBD. So we're just having to work with it and do what we can.
And I think you're an example of many an entrepreneur who's got a skill, a passion, a talent, expertise, and academic accreditation in a field of medicine, in chiropractic. And yet you've had to also put your business head on as well. And say, okay, that's fine. This is what I do. But also, how do I save the business and still be there to provide for our clients and patients moving forward? So you had the two heads really. So you've brought in all the exercises and the telehealth, but also very much about the finances. And I think that's been a real challenge for a lot of entrepreneurs. How do we keep going? Because we don't know what the other side of it's going to be like yet, because we haven't been down this path before. So we're carving the path as we go along, without a doubt. So,
absolutely.
Yeah, and it's interesting that you say, because I think, and I'm sure you're there already, with more people that obviously are working still from home at the moment, they haven't got the right desks, they haven't got the right chairs, their children, their partners, everyone's working across the dining table. So the need for your services is going to be greater than ever because of the ergonomics of not having the right supplies. And actually, as you said, you've had these central business district clinics where maybe we won't just even get the traffic back there again, that people will make a different decision about their paradigm of working moving forward. What are your thoughts around that, Tim?
All the time we're having conversations. We work with insurance companies and corporations. I'm doing these webinars with some big corps, and we're entering into conversation because all these corporations, all these people are working from home, and they're feeling stuck out there. They don't have the support. And my thinking is that we're going to become part of the support network for these corporations. It might be that we close an office in the CBD and we open another one in the outlying districts, maybe. But what I do know is that the whole world is sitting at a computer, and the whole world is losing their posture, they're stiffening up, and that causes premature aging, and it causes dis-ease, loss of homeostasis. So I've got to help people, inspire people to, even when they're at home working, we will have a clinic within a few short miles, and we can help them enormously. And we can certainly, using telehealth, we can help them set up their workstations, and we can, there's many, many, many ways we can support them. So it's how we do this. It's mindset.
It is. And I've got to say on that point, Tim, the whole world is sitting behind a laptop. And that is from 2 and 3 year olds, sadly, doing their nursery online, up to, your 70, 80-year-olds. The whole world's on the laptop, and people's posture exactly is, it's a real crisis happening. And you've got some tools to help people with that.
Yeah, posture matters. Yes. That was the title of my book.
That's right.
People are starting to realize now that what their parents told you, sit up straight, that was sage advice. It really was. And now people are stiffening up prematurely. What's interesting is that we're living a long time. If you live in Singapore, you can expect to live to 85 plus. Longevity has been extended. And this is a new playground for my mind. I'm exploring longevity because we are stretching out lives, but people are still losing their posture, stiffening up, and getting spinal arthritis in their 20s. It just means they're going to suffer longer. Yes. So, the medical paradigm is not working very well. It has to be said. They are amazing for emergencies. Their specialities are amazing. We all need them. But they just don't have a subset which is called wellness. The pillars of health, the things that keep us healthy, they don't really address at medical school. And this is my job. And I think people have had a wake-up call. The world has had a wake-up call. This virus is coming back. Luckily, this virus is only going to kill 0.1% of the people that contract it. 0.1%. And when we look back at previous diseases like previous coronavirus diseases, they've killed sort of 8, 9, 10% of people. So this really has been a close shave. It's been a near miss for humanity, if you like. If this virus doesn't come back, another one will. And I think medicine will be ready for it. We'll probably have more. I think the ICU rooms will be better equipped. But will the population? And I fear not. And this is my main job, I believe, is to try and educate people, inspire people, then we can have transformative change.
I totally agree with you. And I think that lack of dis-ease, I think that is the key thing. And get the host to understand the responsibility for their own health and their own immune system. As always, it's work in progress. I know you're really passionate. I know you love educating. I know you love helping people. So please share with us, what is it that made you come into this field in the first place? And maybe give us some background into your career path that got you to this stage now. At your young age of only, how old are you? You're only what now, Tim?
Lost count. Well, you were at my 60th birthday party last year, right?
Only 60. Wow. Okay.
60,
so tell us.
So if we're talking about career change, I can tell you right now that I'm just about to remorph again. I'm going to regenerate pretty soon. I have had a bit of time to think during the time I've been stuck in the house. There's been a lot of advances in physiology and now how we understand how the body works. So I embarked on a huge postgrad course in functional medicine a while ago. And so that's really about how the body interacts with the microbiome inside the gut. And this is sort of what I'm looking at. I realized that I was helping people with their nervous system and their structure, but people were still suffering. And when you look at autoimmunity and things like that, and you look at autism, and you look at multiple sclerosis, and rheumatoid arthritis, and all those things, most of these things come from the gut. So I suddenly realized that using my telehealth and using webinars and things like that, I would be able to help try and inspire people to change their internal environment. My plan is to help an awful lot of people in the future. So I'm entering another 25-year plan in my mind. I can see 25 years. That'll take me to 85. So
yeah,
with purpose, that'll keep me going.
And I've got to say on that point about the quality of people's gut is the quality of people's health. I've learned that personally myself. And, I am a sauerkraut fan. If somebody said to me even 10, 15 years ago that I would be enjoying a forkful of sauerkraut every morning before my breakfast, I wouldn't have believed them. But the ongoing benefits of the natural probiotics has been immense. And my immune system is so much stronger, which is why I'm so healthy all the time. So the whole functional medicine. So it's almost like you've done the bones, you're now doing, and the muscle, you're doing the nerve, and now you're doing the inside out. And it's the whole mindset part of that. And it's the whole mind, body, and spirit almost, Tim, it sounds to me.
Absolutely, yes. Yeah, totally. So that's where I'm going.
Right, so that's where it says, yeah, fantastic. Can I just say, congratulations.
Thank you. And by the way, you can help me by giving me your recipe for sauerkraut.
I will. Happy to share.
I can send you some love in your direction as well. So originally, I guess I was going to go into the family business, which is a big store in the UK. I hated it, and I didn't know what I wanted to do, but I knew that I didn't want to work in a department store. I used to work at Phoenix in England, and I just sort of hated it. And I really wanted to work in a man's environment. So I went against everybody's advice, and I took a couple of years off and joined the fire department. I was a firefighter for a couple of years, and that sort of taught me how to be a man. And it taught me the way of the world, really. I lived.
Can I just ask you, Tim, taught you how to be a man? What do you mean by that? I'm curious.
You go and live in a fire station, but with a bunch of firefighters, they're going to find your weaknesses, believe me. So you got to toughen up pretty quickly, and then you're taught some things, and you see a lot about life and death situations and what have you. It's quite amazing. But then I realized one fine Friday night, I think it was, I was in the fire station starting a weekend shift. I was watching everybody going out and everything, and I thought, you know what, I could be stuck in the fire station for the rest of my life. And I started to get this urge to travel, which I knew I wouldn't be able to do in the fire department. So I started to think about what could I do. I wanted to work in a man's environment, so I went towards engineering, and I did a degree at Nottingham University. And then very quickly after that, I was out in Africa, and I was building chimneys in power stations and building oil and gas plants and what have you. It was a real adventure, and I loved it. I had to leave because I had philosophical differences with my bosses about.
I love the way you position that.
And it was the first time I was told that I was basically unemployable. But I mean, my philosophical difference with them, it was during apartheid, and it was it's just how people are treated, and I couldn't stay there. So I came back to the UK, and I was working in other multinational construction companies, building malls and things. And I went on to start my own house building company. After somebody else told me I was unemployable, I thought I'm going to have to work for myself in the future. So I started my own engineering company, and I built a house building company and a contracting business. And we used to build paths and anything that I could build, I would do it. And I loved it. And I built up a portfolio of properties which served me pretty well. And then I actually moved back to my hometown, which is Newcastle. I'm a Geordie, and you probably can't tell from my accent, but that's where I'm from. And I moved back into Newcastle. I very quickly got to work reinventing myself. I went to the auctions and started buying old properties. And about a year and a half later, the local street gang in the West End of Newcastle thought I was moving into their patch, and they firebombed one of my properties and sort of basically ran me out of town.
Wow.
And I was, at that time, I was starting to think, is it time to reinvent myself? And I was looking for opportunities. I'd done pretty well. I had some property that I could sell that could pay me. I knew I could take a few years off and retrain. And I was looking at medicine, and I looked at computers, and I looked at all sorts. I'd bought my dream house in Newcastle, and underneath it was actually a chiropractic clinic. And when I was at school, when I was at school, that clinic was a physio clinic. And I used to go to that house. I used to see the physio working with the Newcastle United footballers. And I used to go and see Super Mac and Terry McDermott and in the old days. And it was wonderful for a young lad to meet all these international footballers. But I loved the building in which their practice was. And many years later, I was fortunate enough to be able to buy the house. And by that time, it wasn't a physio practice, it was a chiropractic clinic. And I moved in upstairs, and the young doctors downstairs became my best friend. And I started to explore the philosophy of chiropractic. I never realized the body was designed to be healthy. And I never realized how the body worked. And having considered medicine, and I would have spent my life prescribing drugs. I love the philosophy of these young chiros. And as an engineer, I started going to chiropractic seminars around the world. And while I went to one in Austin. Where was it? Austin, Texas? No, it wasn't. It was in America anyway. And I met the dean of this chiropractic school, and he said that we would love to have you, and we'll even help pay your tuition. So I thought that sowed the seed, and pretty soon after, I was actually working out what I needed to go to pre-med, which is where I went to in San Francisco, to get in. So I had to do my biological sciences. I had to start doing chemistry again and everything. I was 40 years of age, and I was starting again with my general chemistry, organic chemistry, philosophy, psychology. I had all those to do again. And then because I was going to go to med school in America, I didn't have a qualification in English. They wouldn't take me unless I had a qualification in English. I literally enrolled into a school in San Francisco to do English. And after a while, they realized that, I could probably test out of this. So they actually let me do the exam without doing the course. And I managed to get out of it like that.
That's what happens when you grow up in Newcastle. You get a Geordie accent, and I don't think you can speak English.
Well, there is the odd decent school in Newcastle.
Joking with you.
So
just on that point there, Tim,
yeah.
So just to take all that through, you said, I want to work in a man's world. What was it that was driving you to say, I want to work in a man's world? Because I find that quite fascinating.
I think everyone's different. I was brought up by my father. My mother died when I was really, really young. So, my father didn't really mince his words. He's very direct, and it sort of made me a bit stronger than I might have been. I certainly wasn't a mummy's boy. He was in farming, and he was a soil expert. And so we used to talk a lot about scientific stuff, and he really created my mind. He was a very interesting person to talk to. He had an interest in everything, but from the scientific side. And, I was always quite interested in anything scientific, and I sort of ended up going down the engineering side. And then when I was working in the department store, it was not my environment, and everybody has their environment in which they can flourish.
That's right. That is right.
I was a round peg in a square hole.
Yeah.
And it wasn't right for me.
Isn't it wonderful? One, I'm always very, very curious about early conditioning. Where do we get who we are, why we are, our beliefs, our values, and the fact that you enjoyed those, and the fact that even now they mean so much to you, those scientific conversations you had with your father, and sowing those seeds about the the realism, the black and white and the science side of it, how important they were in steering you, maybe unconsciously initially, down the path that you're in. You then find yourself in an environment where you're not going to blossom and bloom. It's not the right environment for you. But you have the courage and conviction then to say, well, let me find something else that suits me and that suits more about me, that's going to allow me to grow. And I think what's been really fascinating as well, Tim, is when people tell you you're unemployable, rather than you sulking and being, negative about it, you've gone, okay, so what that means is I need to work for myself. Okay, so what do I want to do to go and work for myself? And there's power in that. There's power in that. So, and then at age 40, you're told you need to get an English qualification, plus go to another country, and as you say, go back and be a student at the age of 40. Again, that takes courage, it takes conviction, it takes determination and resilience. So, I mean, that's amazing what you've achieved already. So carry on. So that, right, you're doing your chiropractic, you get your qualifications.
So one of the things that I've always been able to do is create a vision in my mind. I'm a huge visualizer. I visualize things. At the moment, I'm visualizing how our clinics will be in 3 months, in 6 months, in a year's time. I'm visualizing what we'll be doing as a family in 3 years' time, 5 years' time. And I think and I think and I think, and I create a beautiful picture. And then I work out how I can create the steps to make it happen.
Fantastic.
And so that's what I've always done. It's how I managed to circumnavigate COVID. I'm creating visions of what might work and how does it look. There's always a silver lining. There's a light at the end of the tunnel.
That's right.
And of course there's stumbling blocks, but you've got to start building resilience at a very early age. That's what I did. And I've been very, very resilient. But it's not something that just happens. You have to build it. And
exactly.
You develop thick skin. You realize that if there is a stumbling block, it's only a stumbling block. It's not. It's only something to get round or over or through.
I love that. I love that. I love that. And it's really interesting about resilience because there's so much books about resilience, courses about resilience. You can't take resilience off a shelf. You have to go through something to build the muscle of resilience, and you've proven that. You've proven that time and time again.
There's a word in medical speak, hormesis, and what hormesis is a little bit of stress is good for you. It makes you stronger, and if you live outside your comfort zone, you are growing, you're expanding. But if you are inside your comfort zone, you're shrinking, you're getting smaller. And it's the whole concept of having a stretch in the morning. If you never stretch, you stay inside your comfort zone, your range of motion gets smaller and smaller and smaller as you stiffen up in life. You have to go through this hormesis, and you can apply that to everything in life.
Absolutely.
You've got to push it.
You do. So tell me, where did you learn, how were you taught about visualization? Because I'm a big believer in it myself. Certainly wouldn't be where I am today without the power of my unconscious mind and telling my unconscious mind, this is how I want my world to play out. How can you make it quicker and easier and effortlessly for me to happen? With some challenges along the way, but actually having that vision of where I want to be and what I want to do. Where did you learn that?
I think it came to me really early on. I can't say that there was a certain moment. There wasn't like a spark or a moment of inspiration. It's something that I learned quite early in life, I think, but I'm not quite sure how. But what I do know is that I've always had this ability. And I don't know whether somebody said something to me that had an effect. But what I always do is I create a picture in my mind's eye of anything that I want to achieve. So in the old days when I was building houses, I had to design the house, and I got a very clear picture of what that house was going to look like. And it had to be beautiful, functional, and it had to be perfect to me. And then once I had this clear picture, I could then create it and put it down on paper. And I think that when I probably I worked with architects and engineers and what have you. When I speak to these people, they all work with visualization. And when I look out my window now, which I'm doing in the CBD of Singapore, I see these amazing structures around me. And each one of those was first an idea in an architect's mind, and they had a very clear picture of what they wanted it to look like. And now later on it's manifested. So, I think that anything, and I even do this with my clients now, my patients, and I ask them, at the moment you come to see me, you have pain. We've had a look at your x-rays, which is again another picture. We've seen some problems. Why don't we create a vision of how you would love your life to be like in a year's time? Get a really clear picture so you can actually feel it viscerally. And then once you've got that clear picture, then we can start to make a plan how to get you there. And I'm a really big believer in emotions, and feelings drive an awful lot.
That's right.
And if you can get excited about something, and so I try and create a picture of vitality and longevity, and what would how would that life feel? And once you get excited about your future life, then you can really go for it.
That's right. I've got to agree with you there, Tim, because I use visualization a lot with my clients and in my own personal life. And it's about, I believe that everyone's born with that ability and we just lose it on the way. Unless you go into something like, a field where it's like, Disney, working for Disney or Pixar or architect or fashion, where you're creating something that maybe hasn't existed before. So I think we're born with it, but it sounds like you tapped into it and understood it earlier on. And of course, what it is, it's in our unconscious mind. So it's imagination, our creativity. Exactly as you say, everything we see that's been designed in the world today has come from our unconscious mind and someone's imagination. So how do we harness that to motivate us and feel excited about where we're moving towards?
Yeah, and in my early life, when I was working for other people, I didn't have an exciting vision of what was happening. And every time I created an exciting vision, it opposed the vision of those that I was gainfully employed with.
Yeah.
And that didn't work. So if you're working for somebody else, you're working to somebody else's beautiful inspiration, their vision. You're trying to create their vision.
Yeah.
And, that didn't work for me. I had to create my own beautiful vision of how I wanted my life to be, and then work towards that. And that's how I changed my career. That's how I'll change my career again in the future. I will create such a vision, and I'll get so excited about it.
That's right.
I do. I get really, really into things, and I get this excitement. I just have to make it happen. And then it starts to manifest.
That's right. So you've had this wonderful changes of careers coming through your life so far and moving on to the next chapter, I know. So what did you need to believe about yourself, Tim, to allow yourself you're doing the visualization. I love that, the compelling vision that draws you towards where you want to go. But what did you need to believe about yourself to make these changes? Because, not everyone has that confidence or ability to do that.
Well, and I know that this, as a parent, that you have to have a growth mindset, because you have to be in the world of creation, and because you're creating a lifestyle, you're creating a new life. And my kids they're going to create a new life, and they'll probably go on and reinvent themselves, and that's the way the world is going to be. People are going to have several careers in the future because of technology is changing so quickly.
That's right.
So I always had this growth mindset where I always knew that I was an evolving piece of work. And I also knew that there's no destination. Life is always a journey. And I just knew that. I knew that from books. Life is not about a destination, because many people, when they reach their destination, which might be retirement or whatever, they're bitterly disappointed. That's
Eckhart Tolle. I don't know if you've read The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle. So he says life is not a package holiday.
It's absolutely. It's not.
It's not.
It's an evolving thing,
yeah.
And
it's evolving.
It is whatever you make it, and people. If you want to get spiritual or whatever, what is the meaning of life? There is no such thing as the meaning of life. It's whatever you give it. That's the meaning of life, right? Life is just life. And it can have any meaning that you give it. So I know how I want my life to look like, and it has to be an evolving adventure.
So it's about the vision, about what it is, make it compelling, and it's about knowing that you're constantly evolving. That life is a journey, it's an adventure.
Mm.
And what I'm also hearing is the emotion about getting excited about what that can be as well. So actually get the excitement and the feelings of moving forward and working towards your next dream or goal.
Yeah, yeah. And then, of course, you don't ever want any regrets. We all have regrets every now and again, but you don't really want regrets. And I don't think people regret things that they've done, but they definitely regret things that they don't do, or things that they don't say, or people that they didn't spend more time with, or whatever. So you just kind of, I'm a real believer that just, if you want to do it, do it.
That's right.
And and what's the worst thing that can happen? You tried, it didn't work out, so you go back to your previous skills.
Yeah.
You don't want a lifetime of regret.
That's
And
right.
you want to sort of optimize your life to the best you can. And we all have unique skills. And if you can find a life that uses your unique skills, then you'll probably be good at it. And if you're good at it, then you tend to enjoy it.
That's right. And then, fun enough, you might make some money at it.
Yeah, but once when you're happy and you're doing something you enjoy, then you have more spirit. Because if you're doing something that you're not enjoying, or something that is not using your unique skills, and you're living somebody else's life, then that's a great way of dampening your own spirit. And to me, that's not a way of living life. I'm all about spirit, bringing the spirit to the fore.
That's right. I totally agree with you. Agree with you.
And obviously, you're asking about career change. You've got to have the growth mindset. You don't want any regrets, but you have to have a confidence, because you will always hit stumbling blocks. And a stumbling block can't stop you in its tracks. So you've got to go through it, over it, or around it.
Yep.
And when things take you off they knock you out of your stride, or they take you off your track, you just get back on track. And you get some momentum going. But you create you're working towards a vision, and that vision can change. That vision can absolutely change. And you're not going down a tunnel towards a speck of light at the end of the tunnel. Very, very often you can't even see the light, because you're working towards something that it's going to work out, but you don't realize the tunnel's got a bend, and just as soon as you go around the bend, boom, there's that light. And I believe so many people give up. When I wrote my book, I was talking to a consultant whose job was to project manage me and make sure I got it out and I didn't hit a stumbling block. And he said, well, his philosophy is just to stay in line, and you can apply it to everything in life. Don't ever get out of line, because then you have to go to the back of the line.
Just keep on going. Yeah.
Keep on going. Yeah. When you change career, it might take 5 years. For me, it took 7 years. 7 years, to become a doctor. And that was I had to stay in line for 7 years, and there was plenty of things that could have derailed me. Plenty of things that could have sort of knocked me back. If life's like a game of snakes and ladders, there's plenty of snakes to slide down, believe me. And you've got to, you just don't, you look for the ladders and avoid the snakes.
That's right.
But staying in line, that's one of the most important things.
Staying in line,
because I knew it's going to take 5 years or whatever plus to get there. But I knew that 5 years was going to pass anyway. Whatever happens, time's going to pass. So in 5 years' time, I could either be even more entrenched and stuck, or I could have a whole new career. I'd still only be, early 40s.
Yep.
Still with 40 years to work.
Yeah, or 50, I say. 50.
Or whatever, yeah.
Fantastic. I mean, that staying in line, that self-belief, the confidence that obstacles will come, the snakes and ladders. It's about, that's life, but that's actually part of the adventure. And the thing for me that I often quote, and this isn't verbatim, but there's a Steve Jobs quote that when you look back in hindsight, you can see where all the dots are joined up. You just got to have faith and belief that they'll join up again in the future. And I think the challenge is having the faith and belief that they will join up in the future. But you're a great example through that navigation and the snakes and ladders where you just staying in line and have that trust and faith it's all working out for you.
Absolutely, yeah. I think it's okay for your vision to change.
I
Because
absolutely.
the world's changing really fast. I mean, I write lists all the time. List every day, every night, about everything. I think that's how I create my vision.
Yeah.
I think I put it down in paper and it gradually creates something in my mind's eye.
Yeah.
But as you're working towards things and you have new information, the vision changes.
When I started my business 17 years ago, the vision I had is different from where I am now. My life has changed so much. 3 different countries, 2 children. And it's good that you're adapting to the changes and making it. It's about, I say, making you feel fulfilled, having a purpose, and making sure that you're doing what makes you happy. And therefore, it has that ripple effect around everyone around you.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Totally.
I'm loving this. I'm loving the fact that you're moving forward into your next 25-year career as well, which is going to be amazing. I say I'm going to share my sauerkraut recipe with you.
Thank you.
Just before we go on to your new passion, there's one thing I want to just confirm with you. One of the things you said earlier in the interview was you're looking for a career in a man's world, and you looked at like a firefighter at first, and then you went into doing engineer. Now that was like 30 or 40 years ago that you made those decisions. My goodness.
It was a while ago, yeah.
Yeah. So what would you say? Would you say those worlds are still the same now from what you know? Or if you were in that situation now, what would your choices be maybe?
Well, I think the world has definitely changed. Interestingly, when I went to train in the fire department, there was no girls in those days. I mean,
No.
this is way back. Now, you've probably got a situation by maybe something 10, 15, 20% of the intake might be females, which I think is great. Certainly a very, very different world. What is very interesting, everywhere that I go now, I see it in Singapore big time. I saw it in Spain big time, where we were before, is that everywhere I go now, I work with big corporations, and I'm dealing with ladies the whole time. They seem to run the show.
Well, we do.
You know, it's true, but I mean, a couple of years ago, I was working for Apple, and every single person that I dealt with was a lady, and they're in top management positions. They're running the show.
That's right.
And it's a very different world, and I think it's great.
Yeah, wonderful, great, wonderful. So now, Tim, tell us about this exciting vision you've got. One of many, I know, but the one about saving the planet. Tell us about that, because I know you're very passionate about this and the environmental issues.
As a physiologist, I have got a pretty good understanding how the body works. And then as a chiropractor, we work with the structure of the spine, and we work with the nervous system. And in our clinics, we're really good at getting people out of pain. We improve the structure and the function. Pain seems to go away. People seem to age better, sleep better. People do really, really well. But there's a huge amount of people that I get frustrated with. And I've looked at it more and more. And what we've learned is that half the nervous system is actually in the gut. I really wasn't having enough effect on half of the central nervous system, half the enteric nervous system, it's called. And I realized more and more that most of the immunity that we have is in the gut. And inside the gut, that's where the outside meets our insides. The gut obviously is a tube, goes in at the top, comes out the bottom. But you put the food in there, and it's got to absorb into the body. And what I've discovered, that this is the missing link for me being as good as I can be as a doctor of natural health. So it's that's why I've embarked on this functional medicine course, and I'm now putting myself in a position where I can help all the people with diseases where the body is attacking itself, like multiple sclerosis, rheumatoid arthritis, lupus, all these things. And I realized that nearly everybody that I know has probably got a leaky gut, which is where the proteins that from your food are getting inside your body, and the body has to mount an attack on protein, which then becomes dangerous because we are effectively made of protein. And if the body mounts an attack on protein, that's the cause of huge problems. So I got interested in this. So I started investigating the biome, which is all the bacteria we have inside us, trillions and trillions and trillions of them. And when I started to read about it, it reminded me of some of the things my dad used to say. Because my dad was an agricultural expert, and he was the #1 soil expert in the north of England. And I remember in the old days, I used to borrow my dad's car, and it would smell of silage. So basically, it used to smell of cow shit. And I used to drive around taking my first girlfriends out in his car, which smelled of cow shit. And
did you get second dates?
Yes, usually. I never really took, I wish I had, but I never really took such a huge interest in what my dad was doing, but now I get it. And so now we've created a situation, and we're talking about saving the planet and saving our own souls at the same time. So if we think about the food we eat, it's grown in soil that has been killed. So it's, we now have food that is not food. It's food-like products grown in soil that is dead. There's no enzymes, there's no minerals, there's no bacteria in there, there's no enzymes, there's no natural food. So we're actually now putting food-like products into our body, definitely not food by God, that's for sure. And I realized that the only way to improve our own health is to improve the food. And to do that, we've got to save the soil. And so I now look at the planet as a sort of an ecosystem, just the way I look at our human body. The human body is an ecosystem of systems, all work in symbiosis. They all have symbiotic relationship. And it's exactly the same with the food that we grow in the fields. And so I've taken interest in it's called regenerative farming. And it's creating live food. And live food is alive. It's got enzymes, it's got DNA. It's alive, and it's got bacteria, and we need that bacteria to help us digest food and to give us the cofactors that help us be healthy. There's no getting away from the biome in the soil and the biome inside us. If you destroy either of them, you're looking for trouble. And this trouble is loss of homeostasis. And health of our own body can only happen when the body can maintain or re-establish homeostasis.
That's right.
And the same is happening with the planet. We're knocking the planet out of homeostasis. And what's interesting is during COVID, industry is almost stopped. And it's amazing to see how the planet is regenerating. I mean, it's amazing. The sky's bluer. Here in Singapore, the animals are coming out of the forest now. We've seen otters all over the place, and we had a reticular python on the green corridor just beside our house the other day. It's amazing how life's coming back, and that's what will happen if we get out of the way of the planet. It'll just regenerate.
Yeah.
And I do not worry about the planet in the long run, because if we do enough damage, it'll just shake us off. We'll be gone, and the planet will go green again, and it'll be fine.
It's been interesting along a very minor point, but I've been walking every day in the gardens, botanic gardens, beautiful gardens, and all this is going on, but nature continues. The butterflies are still floating around. The birds are still tweeting, and so nature will, as I agree, will always continue. So I find it really, really beautiful, actually, Tim, that you've come all the way through all these different careers, and yet I feel the farmer's son talking to me. How poetic.
Yeah, I know. What goes around comes around. And,
it's wonderful.
I remember talking about my dad at his funeral, and because he was a farmer at heart, he's the one person that understands the circle of life. It was okay for him dying. I could sense it. It killed me, but he was okay with it.
Yeah. Well, you're here to carry on his good work, Tim.
It is the circle of life, right?
Yeah.
And you can't ignore it. You can only embrace it and live with it.
Absolutely, and make sure that life is an adventure on the way.
Totally.
I've got 3 questions I like to ask all my guests, Tim. And the first question is, what advice or emotional support would you give to your 16-year-old younger self?
Probably some of the same advice I wish I'd had.
Yes, yes.
I learned a little bit later, but at 16-year-old, I think you've got to create a picture of how your life will. You're still creating that picture.
Yep.
So start getting into the habit of creating pictures in your mind's eye. You definitely want to live your life and not somebody else's life. And to do that, you've got to learn how to say no. And there's plenty of times in my life I wish I'd said no. Too busy trying to keep other people happy. You know, I think look after yourself first, then you can look after. If you're strong, and are successful and make some money, you can do the most good. And so, you know, I think really learning how to say no to people is really, really important, especially when you're 16 and people are leading you astray.
Yeah.
You know?
Or they're leading you where they think it's best for you, but they don't know you. And you know, many people end up in careers to please their parents.
Yeah.
And actually, it's having that courage to say no at an earlier age. I agree. So get in the habit of creating a picture, live your life.
If you say no when you're uncomfortable with something, it gives more power to when you say yes. When you say yes, it means an awful lot more.
I love that.
Because you are choosing to do something. You're not just going along with it.
That's right. And choice is power.
Yeah. This is self-empowerment. And I learned something a long time ago about knowledge. So the other one is what I'm about to say is always see everything as a learning situation. You know,
you're speaking my language.
well, it's true. It's true. You know, knowledge is power, they say. And the more you can learn about yourself, then that's self-empowerment.
That's right.
So keep learning about yourself. What I didn't realize, I was doing it, but I didn't realize I was doing it. I've always worked on my mind. Your mind is the big creator. Your mind it sort of runs the show.
That's right.
If you can work on your mind and try and create good habits.
That's right.
Be more aware of what your mind is engaging in and how it's engaging. Most people are just sort of bumbling through life, I think.
Yeah, but they don't teach, as you said earlier, they don't teach this at school. And you know, if you could learn about harnessing your unconscious mind, we're at school, the power of your language, adopting positive habits, mindset habits, physical habits, health habits, you know, that's where it needs to go back to. And you know, it's part of my passion too. Okay, so what's the legacy thinking that you want to leave your children? Because everyone talks about legacy as their wealth, money's money.
So,
but what's the legacy thinking that you want to leave your children? Because I know you've got twins. They're due to go to university soon.
Yeah, next year, well, so thinking, so how they are going to think, is that what you're asking me?
So if we say that children do as we do, not as we say. So what is it that you want to think up, either believing about themselves or believing about the world, or what self-empowerment do you want them to be able to think as your legacy? What do you want to leave them as a thinking legacy?
All right, so their life to date has been quite an adventure. I'm trying to teach them to continue the adventure.
Continue the adventure.
Yeah, I mean, you know, they've lived all over the world, and you know, life is an education. Gather knowledge. Life is an adventure. And you know, the education comes from life. It comes from travel, from school. It'll come from university. But you know, you never finish learning.
No.
And it's creating the right mindset. So again, it's like, remember, work on your mind, but be aware. You know, how is your mindset?
Yeah, beautiful.
Because your mindset can look at things, almost everything, in two different ways.
Yeah.
You know,
absolutely.
if anything that is negative happens in your life, it's only a disaster if you don't learn from it. If you learn from it, then it's a positive thing. Yeah, it's a genuinely positive thing.
Yeah.
And that's the most. You know, those are the legacies that I want in their thinking. But
Yes.
the other thing is, I think, is that I want them to live with spirit, and I'm hoping I'm teaching them to live in a certain way. I don't think people really will remember details of achievements, but they will remember how you lived.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
it's that spirit, that human spirit that you've either got it or you haven't.
Oh, it's giving me goosebumps, Tim. It's giving me goosebumps. I love it. I love it. I love it.
It's having as much spirit as possible,
Yeah. So, and the spirit is that, for me, it's like that inspiration to draw breath and enjoy the breath of every day and every moment, because that's all we've got.
Yeah. And I guess the other thing that if I've done a good job, then as they go through their life, if they sort of ask themselves, "Oh, I wonder what Dad would have said in this particular. I wonder what Dad would have done. What would have been, in this situation."
Oh wow! I love it. I love it. Wonderful. And I am certain they will, Tim. I'm certain. So, final question, Tim. What are you most grateful for?
I think I made it plain that I was quite grateful for my dad. I lost my mum really early in life, really early, so he brought me up alone, and he did an amazing job. But it's the simple values, the simple things. He really grounded me early on. I remember him saying to me, "Find somewhere beautiful to live, make yourself useful, become good at it, and you won't go far wrong." And that's kind of what I lived. I've certainly lived in some beautiful places. So that's sort of my philosophy that I'd like to pass on.
And fantastic. And that gratitude for your dad is wonderful.
Yeah, and the scientific mind that he gave me.
Yeah.
The thirst for knowledge. I definitely have to be grateful to my wife. Because she's the one that has got to, I'm the one with the visions, but she's got to really kind of make it work. And she's done it very, very uncomplainingly. And, I don't know how many people can go 20 years without having an argument, but Ness and I have never had an argument, really.
Wow.
And it's because we're on the same page.
Yeah, you are. That's right.
I create the vision and then I sort of describe it to her, and I keep talking until she sees it. And then usually we can sort of enjoy a bottle of wine together, and we kind of internalize it, and then we get to work together to make it happen.
Beautiful. What a great team.
So I've got to thank her. And of course, she's responsible for bringing up my twins when I've been at work, and so she's quite remarkable, really.
She is. Yeah.
Then I guess the other thing I'm grateful for is, as I love life so much, I'm sort of grateful for every day.
Oh,
because
beautiful.
how can you not? When you have gratitude, there's no room for negativity.
Absolutely.
So
100%.
Yeah. So in every single day, even a bad day, lots of good things have happened. If you can sort of think about them, and the bad things have just been part of your learning anyway. Mm-hmm. So it's you've got to have gratitude.
Well, Tim, that is absolutely fabulous. And your dad, those sage advice he gave you about the gratitude and find somewhere beautiful to live, be useful, be very good at it, testament. So honestly, thank you so much for sharing. I know other people will be inspired by your life story. And yes, being grateful every day for this miracle that we call life is a wonderful position to operate from. So I thank you very much for sharing all your insights with me.
Well, I should thank you, Mary, because you've actually brought out some good stuff there. Well, you quite often, normally you don't get to talk about stuff like this in normal life, do you? You're just too busy being busy. But I do think about a lot of stuff, but you don't really get to talk about it, so to speak.
Excellent.
So I really enjoyed it. So if I've inspired anybody out there, I'll be very, very happy.
Right, wonderful. Thank you so much, Tim.
It was such a pleasure to talk with Tim. And if you're stuck in the wrong work environment and want to change career and need some inspiration, then I know you'll have also enjoyed listening to Dr. Tim and his life journey to date and his plans for the next 25 years. If you've enjoyed this podcast, please subscribe and pay it forward and share it with others. Thank you for listening. Until the next time, have fun, learn lots, and remember, every time you make a choice, you change the direction of your life.